Welcome to Waking Up is Not Enough, Flourishing in the Human Space. Whether you awaken through meditation, spiritual practice, near-death experience, ingesting a mind-altering substance, or being born again, you still return to your messy life without any special instructions. In this podcast, Polly Young-Eisendrath and Michael Berger talk with scientists, spiritual teachers, and other experts about how awakening can connect to a new path for flourishing and development on which waking up is important, but not enough, and growing up is never finished. Polly and Mike bring different kinds of expertise to the conversation. Polly is a psychologist, Jungian analyst, mindfulness teacher, author, and longtime practitioner of Zen Buddhism, as well as the founder and director of the Center for Real Dialogue. Mike is an expert in psychedelics, an entrepreneur, a skeptic, a practitioner of Jewishness, a documentary filmmaker, and a real dialogue specialist. The Center for Real Dialogue produces and edits this podcast entirely through donations. We want to keep it available for free to our listeners. Our unique perspective needs to be supported by people like you. Please make a donation on our GoFundMe platform, introduce our podcast to family and friends, and support us on social media. We genuinely need the support of all of our entire community, and we're grateful for it.
What is the point? A conversation with Zen Master Barbara Rhodes about the primary point of spiritual practice. Most spiritual practice, especially Zen, emphasizes a kind of engaged curiosity, remaining aware of the present moment. But why? What can we get from this kind of awareness that we cannot get from just enjoying a warm brownie? And how can you drop your desire to control what's going on around you and in yourself, and what might happen if you did? In this sometimes lighthearted and sometimes serious conversation, Mike, Polly, and Barbara, who goes by the name Bobby, tumble on to some extraordinary topics. For example, consider the possibility that good and evil, light and dark, are held together by love, by one great big hug. Bobby had just that experience. And she considers Zen to be the most down-to-earth way to live, in the present moment, making the best of everything. And why doesn't everyone just do it? Barbara Rhodes, whose Buddhist title is Zen Master SoengHyang, is Zen Master of the Kwan School of Zen. In 1992, she received dharma transmission from Seung Sahn, an eminent Korean Zen Master. She is also a hospice nurse who has served in that role for many years. Her new book, Composting Our Karma, Turning Confusion into Lessons for Awakening Our Innate Wisdom, came out with Shambhala Publications in 2024. It was edited by Elizabeth Goldstein, a psychologist and Zen student from Burlington, Vermont. So today Mike and I are going to be talking with Bobby about Korean Zen practice, but especially some things that can be helpful to anybody, I think, especially then Bobby's new book, which is called Composting Our Karma, Turning Confusion into Lessons for Awakening Our Innate Wisdom. I want to add that the book was also edited by Elizabeth Goldstein, who is a friend of mine here in Vermont. And Bobby, we always ask this question of anybody who comes on the podcast, because the podcast deals with awakening and that it's not enough. So we want to start out with, what is it? So if you could tell us your view of awakening, of what the awakened mind is like, what enlightenment is like, and you can use any terms, either formal or informal.
Well, enlightenment is really just one moment of clear mind is one moment of enlightenment. That's it. That's it. These other phenomena that might happen in near death or on psychedelics or in a long retreat, that's some kind of a chemical explosion that's really pleasant, very, I think, authentic. That I think in Japanese they call it kensho.
Yes.
it's temporary. It's just something that it's, to me, it's a validating experience. I had a very strong experience. I've done several 100-day solo retreats, and one time I had this amazing. I said, "Oh, this is better than LSD," because it was like boom, and I saw if you've tried to put it into words, it's like the interpenetration of all phenomena. And as you said, it's all love. It's all harmonized, and that wonderful experience. That for me, that time I was just outside, and it lasted maybe 3 or 4 minutes, something like that. And it was like a gift, a pat on the back or something, like keep practicing, keep trying. That to me, it's just, and some people, they have not had that, and then they think, oh, I haven't had enlightenment. That's not true. It's just, as I said, one moment of clear mind is one moment of enlightenment, and that clarity is nothing to think less than about. It's an amazing thing just to be in the moment, of the moment. And what we always talk about is what is your vow? What is your direction? What's the point? What am I doing just now? So we always go, the book is full of that, like, what are you doing just now? And from that question is what we really use the question, how is it just now? What am I doing just now? What is the point? And it's not serious. It's much better than serious. It's just pure question. And then we talk about having a strong center, your center of gravity, right below your belly button, and just being able to lean into that. And how is it just now? Lean into that center of our consciousness, really, our awake, our strength. One will find that your wisdom and your compassion comes from that place. Your acute awareness comes from. Then you could make these adjustments, like get out of this room or lean into this room, or why don't you try this, or stop evaluating. Just what is it again? Go back to what is it? And that's not boring. What is it? It makes things much less boring,
This is what is called primary point in your practice, I think, is that because I have the only, experience I've had, which is really nothing, but listening to Stephen Batchelor teach about what is this, which was my first experience that there was something about Korean Zen practice that would be different from Japanese Zen practice. But reading your book gave me a different sense. I had in reading your book the sense that there's a certain kind of ordinary experience when one is at the end of one's wits. You give the example, I think, like when you've looked over and over again for your car keys, or when you've looked over and over again for something that you're looking for, and you've gone over it many times, and then you're at an edge where you find it unbelievable that you haven't found this thing, because you could picture everywhere that you thought you put it, but it's not there. Like the other day, I left my ATM. In the ATM, I left my debit card, and I left. And I went away, and I was at a store, and I opened my wallet, and it wasn't there. Now, I won't tell you the whole long story back to the card, but that state of mind that I had at the moment that I saw that wallet empty, to me, this is part of what I understood from your book, that you are instructing us to use that state of mind. Am I accurate in reflecting what I got from?
Well, you have your energy go down to your center and just ask. In my example, you haven't even started looking for the keys yet. You're just standing there realizing, well, I got to find them. And then, that we use, sometimes we'll just clap, or we'll hit the ground, or in this thing. Sometimes I was saying how an everyday person who's never even experienced any teaching about primary point, but they'll just kind of tap themselves on the head, or they'll click their fingers. And that's primary point, where they just go, what? Like that. And then they know intuitively that if they just stop thinking, they can lean into what's actually going on, where they might be. So it's not even already yet. You've already searched. You didn't even start the search. You just right away, what is it? And then, so I just think it's really, that's like such good news that people know primary point already without labeling it primary point, but they'll just, stop thinking, and then that's when I said the wisdom, the compassion comes up from the belly up, it comes up. You just give it a chance,
So Is that similar to breaking trance, like seeing that you're in a trance, and then that moment where you tap your head or clap your hands is to bring you into the present moment, take you out of wherever you were, which may not have been in your body in the present moment?
Well, you're panicking, but like me, what I was thinking, if I don't find them, that this is going to happen, that's going to happen. You don't have a second set, and it's just like, so that's not a trance. That's opposite thinking. That's a dichotomy of, if this happens, then that'll happen, then this will happen. But if you just stop, because your whole point is, where are they? What is this? And just boom, right there with what is it? You intuitively know so much more than you think you do. It's not magic. There is a body memory. There's a cellular memory of where you left those keys. It's not magic. It's just that you just listen to your body. Listen to that. It's not just your body, but listen to that. Listen to your cells. Listen to your intuition. So it's always going back to your intuition.
So the intuition is something, again, that many people have heard about. I'm a Jungian analyst, and so Carl Jung talked a great deal about intuition, and he said it was the function of awareness that lies closest to the unconscious. So we could say that what we call the unconscious mind is always conscious, and it's got an expansive view of everything, but it's difficult for people to directly make use of it. And I think for the very reason you're speaking about, that often what happens is that we're walking around talking to ourselves at often a subliminal level. People don't know they're talking to themselves. The cognitive scientists say we're just about 5% conscious. And what they mean is we don't remember what we're doing. We can drive home and we haven't noticed it. So that sense of, I'm doing this, or I have to do this, or what would happen if I had cancer? What would happen if, this type of, I would call it self-talk, that way we talk to ourselves, is going on pretty much all the time subliminally. And I know that for myself because I've seen it in meditative states. I've actually seen the whole thing. I could see it visually, I can hear it, etc. Then I'm unconscious of it when I'm walking around typically. So to drop all of that, I had to, because I'm a very well-organized person, I actually had to come to a complete crisis to drop it all, to say, I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. I had a particular moment where my late husband had early onset Alzheimer's. I found out that really we had no money, and also that he'd taken out all these credit cards. And I found out that he had no cortex left, basically. It was like all these things I found out really quickly, and then got a letter from a lawyer saying, file bankruptcy and sell your house. And that letter just did something to me. I basically sat down and I realized I don't know what to do. And I dropped into something that knew everything. It just knew what to do. Not that it was a cinch, but
I can't imagine it was a cinch.
No, it was not a cinch. But there was a confidence. It's like there's a rug under the rug. I thought the rug, even after doing all this practice, I thought the rug was the rug. Like, I have to do this stuff. But no, there was a rug under there. I just didn't know it. But I think for ordinary people to have confidence that they do have innate wisdom, that it is available to them, I think that's difficult, because there's an experience that most people have that they blame themselves for their mistakes. They blame other people too. And so there's this sense that, we have to run around and do a bunch of stuff or we'll just be lost. So I wonder how you teach in regard to that sense. People call it ego, or they'll call it the default network, or they'll call it, control, just needing control. How does any individual, apart from people that have had the experience of innate wisdom, how does anyone believe it or know it or figure it out to follow it?
I think through suffering. We suffer, and sometimes more suffering is necessary. People need to suffer a little bit more, or get a little bit more confused, run into a few more walls. Well, that didn't work. Well, that didn't make me happy. Well, that's caused some suffering. Either I caused it or I received suffering. This kind of behavior isn't working. That's not what does work is love and honesty. But it's very hard to be honest and to love sometimes. But if you notice how what that is the only thing that does really work, and it can be very painful to face certain things. But people eventually have enough suffering that they begin to find the way out. And there's so many beautiful paths. There's so many wise people. So not everyone's going to be drawn towards meditation or the Buddhist flavor, which mostly has come from Asia. But now it's been in America for, a good 60 years or whatever, at least, more than that. And it's like, wow, well, this might be nice. We could try that. For me, I just was totally drawn towards Kwan practice, towards asking, what is this? Like seeing that some of the simple answers to some of the simple Kongans, I would go, wow, what a perfect connection. It kind of was trying to get you to go this way or that way. That's what the Kongans do, like a dichotomy. They kind of throw a dichotomy at you, but there's a centerpiece there. And it's very clever. It's kind of like a book of puns, but it's better than a pun. I just thought that was brilliant, that you could see how you're thrown off by this and that. So that's why I was drawn towards Kwan practice, but people might be drawn towards Jesus saves. I don't know. But then you have to get to know, well, what's Jesus pointing towards? What's the point? So that's what hopefully people begin to question, what's the point of it all? And they find a path that works for them. I think I had an existential crisis when I was about 9. I was like, what's the point of this? Why do I eat every day? I wasn't depressed, but it seemed like what a crazy life this is, So I think we have to get on track somehow, find our track.
There are so many levels in conversation, the suffering and crises in life, they do seem to be the doors that open. And, and then there are insights like what you had when you were 9. I had an experience when I was 7 years old also, where I stopped speaking because I couldn't bear what I saw around me. I had no idea what was going on. It all seemed crazy.
Yeah.
But, I spent about 8 months not speaking. And of course, everyone around me was driven crazy by my behavior. I was very content, but, it was having a bad effect on others. But I think, yes, you can fall into insight and you can fall into wisdom. And some people have that available to them. But there are many
Everybody has that. Everybody has that available to them.
Well, I mean, it's available, but a lot of people get very alienated, discouraged, ashamed. That I'm a psychotherapist, right? So I get to hear the stories, and I get to see even the attempts of people to kill themselves and to get out of town. Essentially, they want to get out of the game. I find when there is a degree of alienation and a discouragement in believing anything, that there's a sense that, and I don't think this is really so rare, particularly among, young adults at this point, that there's the feeling of nothing works here. There's nothing working. I can't believe anything that I hear. And in that situation, that individual, it's difficult for them sometimes to feel that any spiritual path would work, And then, of course, it's karma also. I mean, I like the title composting karma. There is a way that each of us has also a kind of life path. We're meeting various obstacles on that life path. And
so what does work? That's the thing, that someone might say nothing works. Well, if they're not going to end their life, then they're going to begin to ask, well, what does work? And that's the point where you begin to question what does work, and your wisdom will, if you ask, you'll find it. You will find it if you ask, and that's what people need to realize, that they have to ask what works, and they do that. They do it, but some people, there's a lot. The 3 sins: the desire, the anger, the ignorance, is very rich, is very thick in this society, and I mean, in the human society, there's a lot of desire, a lot of anger, a lot of ignorance. So this ignorance is like so people get distracted. Well, we know how the world's going, so it's pretty discouraging. But all we can do is point towards, you've got to ask what does work and what am I? What am I? And you can't make someone come to that point. So they have to get all muddled up in whatever that's going on. And finally, maybe they reach a saturation point and they ask what works. If this doesn't work, then what? Right? And already the what is saving their life. The question, what?
Yeah. I think that in your practice, you have a kind of faith in the inquiry, the deep inquiry, the deep connection to innate wisdom. And of course, the three poisons or the three, drivers, however I would tend to say that it's greed and hatred and ignorance rather than anger. But those drivers are very strong in people. Many people are confused. So it seems that in your particular path, that there is a lot of faith in the question, like what's happening, or what do I need right now? And then just to wait for the answer.
We teach a beginner to breathe in clear mind and breathe out don't know. Don't know is brilliant, because when you tell your cognitive mind, your opposite thinking mind, don't know, you're giving it permission to stop thinking. You just tell it, you just say, don't know. And it'll go, well, don't know what? Don't know. Don't know what? Don't know. Finally, you begin to, oh, this is kind of nice. Because then you can hear, I just turned on the heat. I can hear the sound of the heater. Just don't know the sound of the heater. Or it could be birds. It could be intuitive memory that you need, you've come up, you've given it some breath, and it can come up and you can learn something new from just not knowing. So it's a very strong opening experience to do it. The thing that's frustrating for me is that nobody shows up. I mean, we have some students, of course, we have a school, but they might come 7 times and they don't come again. Or they, blah, blah, blah. And I've been watching that for the last 50 years, people coming and going to go. They kind of like that idea of not knowing, but then they get bored with it, and the desire, the anger, the ignorance, whatever you want to call it, takes over. And it's not always a negative thing. They just want some normal life where they can egocentrically identify with who they are, fine, and then they die. But it's like, are you going to really cut through and see the truth? Can you discipline yourself? Can you do the prostrations, the chanting, come to the meditation retreats, take on the koan practice? So that's what I think that's helped me so much to do that. But you the whole thing, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And it's like, so then we always say more suffering is necessary. And so you've got that salad of, whatever. It's just really hard for me to just see where the general human condition is not too good.
Perhaps we get stuck more completely in a culture where there is a lot of comfort, or apparently so. I do think, I'm curious about, Mike, if you have anything you want to ask from the more sort of psychedelic side, because but Mike's involved with groups where people are seeking to wake up, supposedly. They're seeking something through the experience of taking a substance, which I could think could be good news, because at least there's a seeking to get out of, let's say, the typical kind of suffering. I don't know, because I don't hang around with these groups, but the groups themselves seem very enthusiastic. From Mike's report, they're doing research. They think about both the environment for taking these substances and then what to do afterwards. What I feel from my own experience in Zen, what I feel is missing in the psychedelic path is an ethical training. I mean, I have had a lot of ethical training, a lot of training in the precepts, but also in understanding karma and its effects. I've done, a lot of study in addition to practice, and it gives me a frame of mind. I mean, I have a larger frame of mind about what I'm doing. And even if in any particular day, it's not working very well for me, I trudge on because I have enthusiasm about what I'm doing. And to try to bring ordinary Americans to that enthusiasm has been difficult, I think. And we have in the Center for Real Dialogue, where we teach a particular way of speaking for yourself, listening mindfully, and remaining curious. We try to teach don't know mind in the remaining curious thing, we also find that people come with, they're very enthusiastic, and then they do a little bit, and then they don't stick with it necessarily. But Mike, do you want to pipe in here on the psychedelic side?
Well, not so much on the psychedelic side. I agree with you about a lack of ethical guidelines. In fact, that's one of the things we just provided here in Missouri to the different groups that are organizing now, is an outline of ethical guidelines, because this is an issue that I've that's come up in my group that I've seen in psychedelic circles. It's similar to what we've discussed about awakening, right? When people wake up, they think they have their handle on something. They think that it's time to share this, or everybody should have this experience. And so you've got people proselytizing, and there are plenty of people that this is not the experience for them. So that's one angle on it. I was curious about, for people who do not have a formal Zen practice, how would you suggest I begin to weave this into my everyday experience? So if I have this aspect of my intellect that's always trying to make sense of what's going on, in an effort generally to try to control outcomes or to control what's going on, even though I may know that I'm not in control, how would I weave, what practices, you gave us an example of one practice, what are maybe a few other tools that for somebody who's not on this path that they could bring into their everyday experience to begin to open up to asking, what is this?
You would think psychedelics are very limited, and so you come back down, and maybe there's something that stays with you. There's probably always some things that stay with you from having a psychedelic experience. But then what? and you can't stay high all the time. And so then what? And so for me, we do very intensive chanting sometimes. I do prostrations every day. And I ask, what is this, all the time, and just stay in the frame, knowing that, kind of you don't, like, if you think of enlightenment as always having 52 cards in your deck, you always have the complete package. But we don't have 52 cards. I know I don't have 52 cards all the time. So that's why I have to, one of the things we say is watch your step. Be careful, moment to moment. What are you doing just now? One time my teacher said, it's like, always know you're walking on thin ice. Always be, it's not like paranoid. It's just the delicacy of the human condition that we can slip down so easily, and so it's not judging yourself, but just you're a human being, and it's limited. It's not, ultimately we could expand. We can expand. And that's what I think the faith is, that you see that on psychedelics, like, whoa, isn't that something? And I took just about, I don't know how long it's been, 8 months, 6 months ago, I took a very large dose of mushrooms, and I was by myself. I was actually in this room, and it was like 6 hours, kind of amazing. And I just kept this wonder of what is this, and watching these movements and colors and shifts. And what helped me the most was to breathe out, don't know, to breathe in, clear mind, breathe out, that beginner practice. And then I would just be swooshing through this, like, what is it? Universal energy, whatever you want to call it. And then for the first time in my life, I saw the dark side. I saw this dark serpentine, like snake. It's basically snakes going in and out of dark, slippery rocks, and I was very dark, like charcoal color. And I would feel that, and then I would easily shift back into the pastels. It was interesting, because I think because of my practice, I didn't get scared by the darkness. I had never really seen it before. Honestly, I always saw the light, and then I saw this, and I was like, wow. This is our condition. There is a lot. I'm such a Pollyanna. It's terrible, but I've always been a nurse. How may I help you? Let's get better. Let's do this. Let's do that. And that's my nature. And then I was just watching this dark stuff, and then the elections. I went, oh yeah, there's that. It's like, wow, it's just amazing. But at the end of my 6 hours with that, just I was just sat on the edge of this bed, and I was just sitting there. I put my feet on the ground, and I just said to myself, you have a vow, you have a direction. And it was like, I have to know that my vow, my direction, feel my gut, like, and I just felt that. And then I had this thing where I just was being squeezed by love on just my shoulders, just into my body was just being squeezed like a vice of love, just like this over and over. And then I went, okay, enough already. I mean, it was so validating. It was so like when I said I had a vow and direction, then this, where does that come from? That love. But it was like pushing love into me. And I just went, it's not, I'm not special. Bobby Rhodes is not special. I just using technique, using like, well, I'm 76 years old. I'm going to try a big dose of mushrooms and see what happens. Like, that's my choice. I'm not saying it was a good choice, bad choice. Someone should do that, shouldn't. That was something that came. And then when I felt that squeezing of all of this love, it was saying, yeah, you go back out into the shitstorm, but we're here, like we are here. And so then you start talking about bodhisattvas and realms of existence. And wow, it's like I think there are realms of existence. Nobody can cognate it very clearly, obviously, but when you experience it and you feel that support, that gets me as trying to walk the bodhisattva path. And that's what Buddhism has, a language. Not every path has a language. So I like that language. I like that sense of, because in the sutras, they talk about realms of existence and bodhisattvas and then, but that day I just totally got swimming in it that at the end of that mushroom trip. And I am glad I took mushrooms that day. And I guess I'm some people will hear this podcast and say, well, she's a nut, 76 years old, bless your brain out with mushrooms. But something intuitively asked me to do that, I don't think I'll do it again. It was exhausting. I mean, because I already knew most of what I saw that day. I could, so it was kind of a bit much for me. So I really don't think I'll do it again, because the beauty of don't know is you could find that sitting on the toilet. You can find that brushing your teeth, So the thing is strengthening. It's like it's just like exercise, strengthening, spiritual strengthening. What are your techniques to find the path? So when you talk about the ethical, what is your path? What is a clear path?
I do think that is what is, let's say, different about what I would call religious traditions. I think that in all of the world religions, I grew up a Roman Catholic, now I'm a Buddhist, I take it as a religion. There are paths. The paths have been established over time by people practicing. Now, not every instruction is relevant in the present moment in the ways instructions are given. But one thing that I have appreciated so much about Buddhism is, first of all, in early Indian Buddhism, how much time people spent just observing their experience. It makes me cry when I think about it. What's in the Abhidharma, what's in Yogacara, people sat and watched, and they had no machines. There wasn't, fMRI or anything like that. They simply watched. Oh, now there's this, now there's that. And they got down to like a third of a second being able to see the changes, to watch, and then to see what is, let's say, the foundation, this love. And also, there are these opposites. And yes, some of it is darkness. And I think when I was growing up, probably when I was about 4, the first dream I remember was just I would step on the ground and it was a tangle of snakes. It was just balls of snakes that I was stepping on. So I'd start to step on the stone step and it would turn into these balls of snakes. It was so terrifying for me. I mean, I still have the picture of what that was like. And another dream I had that was really about turquoise and orange just coming together, and the clash being nauseating because it was so clashing, just the colors, So there was something that I was getting a picture of as a very young child that was the difficulty of living here. Then when I came across Buddhism, which was when I was in my early 20s, what I did love about it was that there were instructions. I mean, I wasn't just flopping around there trying to figure out something. And so I particularly have loved the instructions. Now, other people think I'm crazy when I say that. It's like, I like reading Abhidharma. I like reading Yogacara. I don't read anything in Sanskrit or anything like that. I don't have any Asian languages. I read them in English translations. I'm grateful for those translations, very much grateful. People go out and take the mushrooms or take ayahuasca. I actually, as I've said on this podcast, I had to take LSD in order to participate. I taught at Bryn Mawr College for about 12 years. In order to participate in the committee on interpretation and criticism, everybody had to take LSD. So I had to take it. I was already practicing Zen. And it was an interesting experience. It was more like a psychotic experience that I had when I was conscious. I mean, I was conscious and aware of what was going on. I wouldn't want to repeat it, but I learned some things from it. But, it's like I would not try to follow that path. But I appreciate also that people are seeking, and it's just that it's hard to seek without having a path that's being you're instructed on. And of course, the path I was instructed on way back then was that you have to do this ethical practice in order to do the meditation practice. Like you don't start with a samadhi, you start with the shila or the ethics. You learn this. And then gradually over time, I learned that that's an inquiry also. It's not a set of rules. You're inquiring, like, how can I live without killing, for example? Or how can I speak without lying? These are more like inquiries. I think it's hard to have faith in awakening if you don't have a path. I mean, I think that's what you're saying also, Bobby.
It's hard to find the path. So
it's hard to find the path too.
I mean, so many people what is the path? And that's the thing that, first, I think the first experience as a child, many of us have is not believing in ourselves 100%. We have our doubts and we're comparing ourselves to our peers and by all kinds of superficial ways and then our level of intelligence and hopefully someone finds a vocation, so what am I going to do? What am I? And for me, I always wanted to be a nurse. And that's like, I hear you, I haven't read any sutras. I'm not into reading sutras, but I know somewhat a little bit because I get exposed through the quantum school, but that's not who I am. I'm just a gardener and a nurse, and there's nothing less than about any of us. It's just that we have to find what we are. How is it just now? And be honest and as I said, inquire and don't look around at what other people are doing, but what are you? All of my friends in high school went to college. I didn't go to college. I went to a trade school. And I went to a 3-year hard training nursing school. It was unbelievably difficult. And it was like just what I needed and wanted. But that's because I was asking, what am I leaning into? When in high school, I was like, ooh, what is this? And so we have to encourage that in all of us. Some people they're already in their 70s when they start practicing. Some people are 16, and how do we help them believe in themselves? And that's why we have the simple koan practice that we do, where an example would be like a teacher calls these 2 monks into the room and he asks them, he doesn't say a word, he just calls these 2 monks into his room and he points to some bamboo blinds that are hanging down at his window. And they together simultaneously walk over to the bamboo blinds, they simultaneously draw up the blinds. And the teacher watches them and he says, one has got it, one has lost it. So then we ask the student, which one had it, which one lost it? And that is like, that's such a profound thing because the authority figure said, one has got it, one has lost it. But only one thing happened. They went over and drew up the blinds. It says simultaneously drew up the blinds. So then, but you're thrown off because the teacher said one had it, one didn't. And so then that's a simple koan. And some people, boom, immediately answer it. Other people work on it for 6 months or whatever. They don't see it, but they're asking, what is it? They trust enough. They trust something for example, that Kwan system. They trust it enough that there's an authentic, good answer. And when they get it, it's such a relief. It's such a wonderful answer, and it's not complicated. But boy, this whole thing, one got it, one didn't, really throws people off. So that's what I trust. That's what I found with the it's I'm not a Zen teacher. I'm not a Korean teacher. I just said I like that system of Kungan and the way that my teacher, Zen Master Seung Sahn, taught it. There was no smoke screen. He really wanted you to answer that question. He would be so happy when you answered the question, and he would even give you hints to answer the question because he loved you. He wanted you to get into it with him, and see, oh, this can help. And then we have our life kungans, so we talk about our inner world. Like I'll start thinking, oh, well, being a nurse, why didn't I just go for being a doctor? That's like we call checking. Well, you could have been more than a nurse, but it's like, then I'll start to, that's when we're checking. Like, we'll go, well, is that the best thing you could have done? But then if we just hit the floor, we teach the primary point, boom, then you stop that thing. One's better, one's less, and just go for it. Go for it. Know what you're going to go for, and of course we're going to run into walls and make mistakes. So our mistakes are some of our best teachers.
Yes.
But we see it's a mistake because we're paying attention. So that's the whole gamut of life in a way.
What did you see in terms of transformation in people in the dying process? Mike and I have been interested in, near-death experience where people have these memories and then come back and talk about it, and where the heart has stopped or the breathing has stopped. And so I wonder sometimes, I have been with a number of people through the dying process, particularly my late husband. I went through every moment and had also his Zen teacher was there. It was a remarkable experience. But, then I also helped my parents and friends through the dying process. I know it varies a great deal, but I assume you have had a fairly large exposure to different kinds of people, different kinds of dying. I just wonder if there's anything that you could generally say about innate wisdom coming through when people are dying, or anything about
I don't think that's the best time for innate wisdom to come through when you're depleted physically. I didn't see a lot of innate wisdom coming through. It would be like more just like if someone has a bad flu or something. That's not the time they're going to be at their best. So I think that's why we have to practice before we start dying. I don't think it's some magic time for most people. I have no idea after their heart stops where they go, but they're gone. They're gone to me. There's no light in their eyes, and so I didn't feel. I felt a couple of times something really amazing happened but it was just these old ladies that always went to mass, and they always helped people. They didn't say bad things about people, and they just went through their life. And then I would see a very, very peaceful transition, but I had I wasn't included in their transition. I would see that they had a wonderful beatific experience because they were so peaceful. And I had one man, he filled up gas tanks. He worked in a garage. He didn't even own the garage. And he was just a very ordinary blue collar person. And he died. He had a heart attack, and then they brought him back to life. And when I met him, he was dying of lung cancer, and he was so angry. And I said, what's going on? Why are you feel so angry? And he said, because I already died, and I was getting cold, and I saw this light, and I never felt so peaceful in my life. And then something started to suck me back into this miserable life. And all of a sudden he's recovering from his heart attack and getting lung cancer. And he said he was so angry because he didn't get to finish that transition. And he's really one of the only person I talked to directly that had that experience, that came back. Because you're not supposed to come back. I mean, why come back, right? So that's why he said that. He said, why did they pull me back? And so I know that really happens, and you hear about this. What he described was exactly the same as what I've heard people describe, So yeah, that's there. But what are we going to do while we do have our feet and our hands and our what is your vow? What is your direction? What are you going to do with yourself? And that's what I just teach all the time.
So tell us what you say as vow, just because, again, I could say vow, or I could say set your intention. Many times when I work with couples, I say, I wonder if you could promise to your partner that, you won't do this or that again. And then many times I get the answer, well, I can't promise because maybe I will. Maybe I will lie to her again, or maybe I will hit her again, or whatever. So I say, well, setting your intention might be helpful. That, I'm not saying that in advance that you'll never do this, but that if you set an intention and you speak about it, it gives a way that you can focus and contain things. If it starts to happen again, you can remember. And so many times I've had to talk people into this idea, even in a couples therapy session, of promising something. So taking the bodhisattva vows, I sent my son in his young 20s to a Zen group out in Seattle or someplace, and he started hearing these vows, and he was like, "They're crazy. These vows are crazy. They're going to save all beings." He said, "Mom, I can't do that. That's a lie. I can't save all beings." And I said, well, you have to ask about the vow. You have to inquire. You have to, don't take the vow literally, take it seriously. But really, it was a big deal. He couldn't do that. I mean, he's a computer programmer. He wasn't into saying he could save all beings. And really, he quit, partly because he couldn't do that. He couldn't make that promise, because to him, it was like distorting something. But again, the words that we use, the direction we use for our promise or our intentions or our vow, it's not obvious to people sometimes, why that's a good idea.
Right. That's the frustration, that if you still have that dichotomous idea that some will do it, some won't do it, and I have that as well. But all you could do is say, am I going to try to do that? Am I going to keep going till every single thing is saved? Why not? Like, why not vow to do that? Like, what else is there to do? So that's how I feel. Like, yes, I take that vow very seriously, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, and it's just like, why not? And so where does that come from? And it's not even better than like, oh, I'm more holy because I have that vow. No, but I just have to have the vow. That's all. And not worry about, don't call it holy or unholy, but it's just, it's there. And we can't give that to someone. We have to just teach them to simplify and find, I try to talk people into having a daily practice, and it'll work if you keep staying at it. And that's all we can do. That's all we can do. But I certainly don't throw away your vow if you have it, and don't think other people should have it, but just you have it. You have it.
So how would you say a vow? What is a vow? I mean, what would you say from you to what is a vow? What is it?
Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all.
Do you see that as a promise, an intention, a path, an inquiry? I mean, yourself, do you think of it as you're promising to do this, or you are?
That's all there is to do. That's all there is to do. And it's not a promise. It's a vow.
Yeah, I don't know how other people take, people take wedding vows, or they used to. Maybe they don't anymore.
Yeah, look what happens. So, be careful what you vow to do.
Yeah.
I want to jump back first to thank you for sharing your experience 6 months ago with the mushrooms. I find it interesting. Part of what I heard you say is, I don't need to do it again. It's interesting that it's a reminder that squeezing you described, being squeezed with love, that is probably an experience that is open to your possibility at any moment. But for some reason, the psychedelics seem to access that realm to drop all the games and the baggage so that you can be present in that moment. Right. So they facilitate that. And I wholeheartedly agree with you that in essence, it goes back to, I think, something you were alluding to in the beginning about what is it pointing to? That's always there for us to access. It's just a reminder that I am loved. This is always present. For whatever reason, I seem to forget or block it out, or I'm not worthy of it, however that works. So I wanted to thank you for sharing, especially that description of the darkness also is there as well. It's not just all light. And that very somatic experience that you described of having love being pressed into you, right? That it's always there, being receptive to it, being aware of it, being cognizant of it. So to play on the title of your book, then what would you recommend, or how would you recommend I compost my difficult experiences? What does that look like?
You know what it looks like. You learn from your mistakes, right? You just keep learning and learning and learning. And we talk about don't check, don't hold, don't make anything. So don't check that you made a mistake. Don't check your mistake. Don't hold look what I did yesterday. And don't make, oh, I'm going to keep doing this day after day. Don't make that. Only don't know. Only how is it just now? And then you begin to digest your mistake. If you made a mistake, you go, oh, and you draw back and you do promise not to do it again. But it's not like a verbal promise. It's like, oh, I don't want to do that again. That causes suffering. That's not useful. And so that's composting it. And it taught you that caused suffering, and you compost it and you use it as an experience. It's wisdom. It becomes wisdom. All of our mistakes can become wisdom.
So rather than holding on to it as an aspect of myself, it's something that I continue to bring into the world.
There is no self.
Okay.
There's no container. There's just
the ever-present awareness.
Yeah.
Okay. So I haven't heard you use the word intention.
That was intention, right?
Okay. I wanted to see if you see that as a parallel. So that is your intention then to go forward as this awareness without holding on to basically whether it's joy or sorrow, right? Fear or love. It's the experience of it, not getting stuck in it, where you become this solid thing, which is an illusion.
It's all a thread, we talk about Indra's net, where everything's reflecting everything else.
Yes.
And it's a thread. And, the emptiness is the string of the thread. It is the thread, and then it connects. And each person is so capable of being a bead, of being a part of a what's it called? Brain. Mala, a bead mala, where we're all part of it. And the emptiness is the thread. And then we just have to, if we each own our experience, own our life, and learn from things, that's the love. That's the love. It'll go into the light. It will become. If we could just see our mistakes, right? Just see. Don't lie. Like, why would you lie? And it's such a habit for people to lie. And I don't know. It's like, it's so sad. And so I think we use the sadness to strengthen ourselves as well, to just get up anyway, get up. So we have a saying, 7 times fall down, 8 times stand up, which I just love, because you might as well get up 8 times, even though you only fell 7, because you're going to have to get up again. You're going to have to get up again. So where do you get that impetus to just keep getting up, and not getting depressed and not giving up?
Well, and that seems to wear down over time, at least in our culture, from the lives I observe, right? I tell myself a story that it gets more and more difficult to stand up again, but that's just a story.
That's just a story.
Right? It's about that vow or intention that I'm going to get up.
Yes, exactly.
Every time. And in a way, you also haven't used this word, though, that's developing this force of will, the will to commit to getting up, no matter what comes your way, and to, in essence, not letting it stick to me, that it isn't of me. It's of my experience, and that it contributes.
Then you can get up when you know it's not of you. You're not down. There is an up. You get up.
And so I hear a recurring theme that we've discussed, which is also related to not taking things personally. That would help with the ability to keep getting up, as opposed to saying, I made this mistake, I always make this mistake, and I project that into the future, that it's some reflection of or aspect of me.
Yeah.
So it's a shift in perspective. And I think, and I want to go back and bring that may be one of the potential healing aspects of a psychedelic. It seems to break one out of that typical, whatever your habitual mindset is, it at least suspends it temporarily so you can feel love squeezing you where you may not in your everyday life, because there are all these things pulling at your attention and your time. So another thread in what I hear is ultimately being accountable for my own experience, not looking to others as a guide, but finding my own path, my own vow, and then having the ability, the will, I don't want to use the word desire, it's a different desire, right? But this desire to maintain a certain vigilance and awareness, to step back and maybe be the observer, to observe what's arising and not have it direct my life. In order for me to get up every time I fall down, I have to know that I have to have the confidence in my ability to get up. I have to know that this too will pass and things can flip. So in part of what we've been talking around, I think, has to do with where we began about what happens when you wake up. Then what? I believe you said in the beginning, right? And this conversation then is about that growing up, about discovering for myself what my vow is, what is my intention, and how can I serve. So I guess this is a roundabout way of getting to the question. How has a life of service informed your practice? Do you see a connection there between a life of service and how it may expand or deepen your practice?
It is your practice. There's no this and that. It just is. You could be a garbage collector and be an incredible bodhisattva because you see things that are being wasted, and you could maybe somehow distribute that. You could somehow do something about the waste. Just because you've seen it, it would be so painful for me to have to watch what people are throwing away. But you can see how painful that is, and maybe do something about it. So any vocation, anything can become a vocation rather than a job. Our whole life can be a vocation. So we feel the pain and we want to do something about it. And anyone can do that. Anyone. Right?
Yeah.
That's getting up. It's doing something about it. Yeah.
There's also I think in the mix of this, I was thinking of the movie Perfect Days with the Wim Wenders movie about the toilet cleaner in Tokyo. It's a Japanese movie that came out about a year ago. It's a lovely, lovely movie about cleaning toilets, with this kind of attitude of bodhisattva. Obviously the man enjoys it. I like cleaning, so I also think it's a movie for people who really do like cleaning. You get interested in it. But there's this thing about love. And I think that people, no matter what, can recognize that they're never alone if they just ask for help internally. I mean, it's Mary Oliver has some poems about, she has a lot of poems about this, going out in the morning and so on, and going to this particular pond that she would go to. And she said, nobody could ever convince me that I'm alone. And I feel the same way. I mean, I never feel alone. I don't know how people do feel alone, because there's always help. You just have to ask for it. And then the help is also very palpable, just like when you were being squeezed, I mean, actually, many times I do lose a lot of things. I'm fairly absent-minded on a lot of levels, and I just ask for help. Even that card that got stuck in the ATM, I immediately asked for help. And then, I left the general store and I went back to town, and there it was. It's like and that's so ordinary. I mean, it's not like I count on it, like I really count, like, oh, of course I know it's going to be there. No, it's more like it's manifesting all the time. And I am confident in it. Now, I'm not necessarily confident in it when I'm personally having to make a judgment about something that I'm not well informed about, like how to use a computer thing. Like right now, my son is teaching me about AI. Mike tried to teach me about AI. I have no ability, and end up, I'm just so frustrated, and he's so frustrated, and I don't ask for the bodhisattvas then. Maybe because I feel like, who cares about AI anyway, But so I've got too much ego in there. But the thing is, I know I'm not alone. I know that even in any situation, if I just ask for help, it's there. Now, I wish people could know that. I wish they would know that is available, and it is love. And sometimes you need it when you're getting out of bed in the morning. Sometimes you need that because you can't actually feel it yourself. You can't feel like why you should get out of bed or why you should get dressed, or, so just ask for help. You get it. But it's like you have to ask sincerely. You
have to find a path. You really have to find a path. And like, I'll wake up at 3 a.m. This is very common for people that get close to 80. You just don't need as much sleep or whatever. I don't know what's with my body, but I'll just lie there and start doing mantra, because otherwise I can't believe he won. Like some kind of negativity comes into my head, like, what's going to happen now? And it's like, I don't know. It's like, but it's like, that's not going to help me go back to sleep, or not going to help the universe for me to be going this and that to happen, and this is going to happen, and blah, 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 blah. You know, that's what we call checking, holding, and making. It's very, I like those three terms, checking, holding, because if you look into your head, you're either checking, you're either holding, or you're making something. What's going to happen? You know, and so if I start just doing some simple mantra, you know, just repeating it over and over, and all of a sudden I'm like in that zone of just don't know. And that's much more, it seems like you're just bowing out of life, but you're not. You're tuning in. You're tuning in to your wisdom and your compassion by doing that. And that's what people need to learn, that that actually works. Anybody could do a mantra, anybody. You know, my teacher used to joke, he said, like, you know what a great mantra would be? He'd only been, it was like 1972, you know, he said, you know, we could use Coca-Cola, 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 Coca-Cola. It flows, it flows. He said, that's a beautiful mantra, Coca-Cola. So it doesn't need to mean anything, you know, just say it. So that's what people need to be taught that, but they have to suffer enough to come and ask for help, you know.
Yeah. That also reminded me that I use mantras also when I wake up at night. But years ago, you know, I'd gone to a couple of these Goenka retreats, and there's Goenka teaching on the video, and he's teaching eventually in the 10-day retreat, he's teaching you a mantra for falling asleep, that you breathe out and you say anicca, anicca. And so anyway, I found it very helpful. I came and I taught a friend of mine, because she was having problems sleeping. I said, well, try this, you know, just when you breathe out, say anicca. And then she came back. She says, that Anita thing really works. I just say the name Anita and I fall asleep.
Or Coca-Cola really works. You know, it's just a matter of taking away the thought and just using a mantra. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing. You take away your thought and you have wisdom. It's like, we don't get that. It's just hard to get that actually would work.
Yes, yes, yes. And that it could be anything because it fills a channel.
Yeah.
Allows you to stop doing this other thing.
Right.
Other thing.
The habit force. Yeah.
Yeah. That other thing is the thing that's suffering. I think this is a good place to close unless you want some, Mike, do you want to clarify anything else from your end?
I just want to see if there's one thing, a thread that I'm pulling together. Maybe it's just me. So what I'm hearing is that my suffering can lead to a shift in how I perceive myself. And earlier in the podcast, you mentioned coming from a strong center of gravity. I guess I translate that into being firmly grounded in the present. And I believe I heard you say that that is where wisdom and compassion comes from. Or maybe it's in that grounded present state is where I'm receptive to hearing.
Because you find your gut, you know, and then you're asking what, you know, tennis players, it's amazing. That's their gut. And boy, tennis is, every sport's difficult. Where is he going to hit it? How fast is it going to come? You know, it's like, what am I going to do with that's, you have to be on top of everything to play a good tennis game. But they're going, and that's boom, they're there. And everybody has that thing in them. And it comes from, you know, physically from your gut. The Army knew that, right? Where's your guts? You know, run into the war, run into those bullets, you know, find your guts. Like, all right, if that's where you want to put it, you know what I mean though?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, that's it.
And I think this is one of the great challenges of our time. And I hear you saying as well that you can't bring this to somebody. They have to come to it of their own volition.
Yeah.
Right? Because the work it's an inner work. It's not something you're copying. You can't just do what I say to do, like Anita.
No. Yeah.
Right? Because I'm going to hear it from where I'm at.
Yeah.
But ultimately maybe this is my own projection, but it's raising my suffering to a conscious awareness of my suffering. And that suffering, in a weird sense, it's not even personal. It's part of the nature of being here. That gives me the impetus to find my intention, to ground myself, and as you would say, in my gut, to have the guts to get up again.
Yes,
perhaps.
Yes, exactly. Why get up? Then you have to have a vow to get, you have to have some intention in your life to
get out of bed every morning and to get up every time you're knocked down.
And drop
Absolutely.
your habit force. Like, you don't like your habit force, really. So I'd like to not have a habit force. Why not? be more fluid, wouldn't it? It'd be happier, it would be kinder. So just finding those things, why get up, you know?
So maybe a question to leave our listeners with. You use the terms checking, holding, and making. Do you have any little tricks to how to catch myself when I'm checking, holding, or making?
Ask, what is this? And then you can identify it. You'll see it.
Okay.
Yeah. Always go back to, what is this? Yeah.
So that is the most fundamental question to ask in the moment.
Yeah.
What is this? What is this? And it's not about the answer.
No, it's about attention.
Okay.
Coming to attention. That's all.
Yeah, this has been a fun conversation. I want to say that I've enjoyed it on many levels, but I think one of the big takeaways was the Coca-Cola for me, because the sound is great. Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola. Never thought of that before, ever. And, just also the way, Bobby, that you work with what is this and the primary point, I think is so tangible. And I'm hoping that people will be able to pick up that this is a tangible thing, as well as the koan that you gave about the two guys raising the blinds and who's the best one, who's doing it the right way, the wrong way. It's that really that people get caught in all the time. That's one where they're checking and making and so on. So noticing that is this checking making thing,
Yeah.
that is something that I think these very kind of basic thumbnail kinds of tools can be helpful to people no matter what path, or even if they don't have a path. I also think people need a path or something to follow. But, even if they don't, they have these things that you've talked about that they can use, even if they don't have the path. And you had a very early calling to serve us and to help. Some people don't see what their calling is. Everyone, I believe, has a calling. We have a calling to help. And it's always helping from our own imperfections and sufferings. That's where we're getting trained. But again, to make that conscious and to realize, oh, that's really what my career needs to be. That's hard. That's hard for a lot of people. They don't make that link, need an early link. But I think that the overall practicality of your approach is great. Also, I really appreciated all of your open-heartedness with us and open-mindedness, and also telling us about the mushrooms, which I haven't done, but it was interesting.
Well, it's embarrassing almost for me, because I go, well, don't be embarrassed. This is what you try. I don't think anybody needs to do that. It's whatever.
But you got something
listen
from
to your
it.
gut. Listen to your gut. What do I need to do? Sometimes, we need to do something radical just because to change things.
Yeah.
It has to come from not knowing. Yeah.
Yeah. It also allows you to speak to I feel like I sort of like I speak like an old fart or something. Like I don't, it's not as though I don't do these things because I don't think they're interesting. I really don't have that. I haven't been drawn to it, but I also am happy that it's going on, that people are taking substances. I'm not happy that it's all legal, but because I think that there's a lot of caution needed for different kinds of people that do have psychotic experiences. And I've seen it in my practice.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it is a really problematic thing if it happens.
Right.
So I'm not happy about that, but I'm happy that people are seeking in this way. Because it seems like there is, again, the idea, oh, I could wake up to something. So what is this is a simpler way. You can wake up with that without taking anything or having to buy anything. So thank you so much for your openness, your authenticity, and doing the book and speaking with us.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
It's great to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Mike, and both of you.
Great to meet you, Bobby. Thank you so much for joining us. Enjoyed this episode